Welcome back to this last segment of this DVD. Let's jump right back into it. Genesis 2:5. Now no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yahweh Elohim had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. First thing we need to point out and understand is everything dealing with Adam is of the field, where everything on the sixth day was of the earth. And yes, there is a difference. Of the earth is wild. Remember, they were to subdue it. But in these verses, we are talking about the field. This is a domesticated or tame animals and domesticated plants, which none were made or sprung up yet, as rain had not fallen on the ground. But a mist went up from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. Now we have evaporation of water from the ground, causing it to rain, watering the entire surface of the ground. All the third day planting will no longer be laying dormant. And Yahweh Elohim formed the man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils breath of life, and the man became a living being. Remember, throughout this study, I have reminded you the difference in created and made. See, Adam is being formed or made, not created. That's because mankind had already been created during the creation period. And Yahweh Elohim planted a garden in Eden to the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. This is a special man, not like the cave dwellers of the sixth day man, which were hunters and fishermen. This special man will be a gardener, tame and domesticated. And out of the ground Yahweh Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, this one is a little tricky if you're not being guided by the Ruach. Remember, at the start of this study, we were to keep in mind this story is both physical and spiritual. We have all the trees growing from the third day planting that was covered in the rain falling. This is talking about the heavenly host, our King Yeshua, and the adversary, Satan. As the tree of life, Yeshua is good for food, but also to live forever, as told in Genesis 3:22. Remember, man does not live by bread alone, but every word of Elohim. The food in this verse is the word of Elohim. Bereshith 2:15. And Yahweh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. See that? Adam was to work this garden. That would be 6 days with a Sabbath rest. Sabbath being from the very beginning. And he was to guard it. Who was he to guard it from? That would be the 6-day creation that Cain was worried would kill him, because they were wild cave dwellers. Hunters and fishermen have no problem killing living creatures. He was also to guard this Sabbath day. And Yahweh Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. Now, you guys know Adam lived 930 years before he died, right? So did Elohim lie? Of course not. I've already showed more than once in this study that one day to Yah is 1,000 years. So as we can clearly see, Adam did die within one day. And Yahweh Elohim said, It is not good for man to be alone. I am going to make a helper for him as his counterpart. And from the ground Yahweh Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heaven, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. See, once again we are told he made, not created, these beasts of the field. Allow me to point out once again, the field, not the earth. So the man gave names to all the livestock and to the birds of the heaven and every beast of the field. But for the man there was not found a helper for him as his counterpart. So if they were already beasts and animals, how did Adam naming them? It's simple. We know what a tame dog is, and to apply this to the earth and not the field, we simply add wild or feral to it. So a dog being made here is domesticated, while those from the sixth day were created wild and needed to be subdued. It's the difference in a domesticated dog and a wolf or a coyote. So Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. Here again, this is being given to us as simple as our minds can understand it. But this is the helix curve, not a physical rib. And the rib, helix curve, which Yahweh Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. Now, why did Elohim not form the woman from the ground like the sixth day creation and the way he formed Adam? That's because this is a special bloodline that is to bring about our Messiah. This is the first marriage. While the sixth day creation was running around multiplying, being fruitful, notice not once did Elohim give the command to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. And the man said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called woman because she was taken out of man. And just like that, the animal names cover over into the sixth day creation, so does this title of woman. Bereshith 2:24. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall join unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Marriage. This is also an example of the father and son being one. When we are in agreement with each other, we are one. That does not make the man the woman, and it does not make the son the father. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed. This is a very important verse. To not understand they were naked and unashamed is to not understand what happens in the garden. Chapter 3. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, Is it true that Elohim has said, Do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, Do not eat of it, lest you die. Bereshith 3:4. And the serpent said to the woman, You shall surely not die. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. And she took of its fruit and ate. and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. Do you see what has happened in the garden? Do you think it was about disobeying Elohim by eating an apple in a fig garden? Notice they did not cover their mouths. That alone should tell you everything you need to know, but it is clear late in these later verses. It is this eye-opening moment. While some people love and follow Satan, this is the reason the world belongs to Satan, and many openly follow him. They feel as he has set them free from the bondage of the true Creator. Satanists understand better what happened in the garden than Christians do.
Hail, comrades! Hail, sisters and brothers, and hail, Satan! We are gathered here to celebrate the spirit of humanity and the dawn of a new American era. In a season when many commemorate the birth of Christ, we commemorate our own Genesis, the enlightenment of all humanity, a revelation of our nature as written in the annals of history, a gift from Lucifer, the light bringer, the morning star, and the rebel. We are Satanists. We engender moral, spiritual, and sexual freedom, personal independence, and insist upon personal choice in all things. Satanism is a philosophy of action, and those who desire and act not breed pestilence. We do not seek followers. We are seeking collaborators, individuals for a visionary satanic alliance, leaders of the new American era. Let us rise up in celebration of our satanic nature and cast our chains into the dust of hell. All hail the new American era. All hail the eternal rebel within all of us. To liberty, humanity, and justice. To the satanic emancipator and end of repressive traditions. Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Christians and many others think the serpent that tricked Eve was a physical snake, but it was not. That was a representation of Hasatan himself. And Elohim said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your abdomen you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life." Again, this isn't a physical snake, but a representation. And he is telling Hasatan, you are lower than any creation Elohim ever created. Now these next verses are very important. It either makes or breaks your understanding of the truth. Bereshit 3:15. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between her seed and your seed. He will crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. And I will put hatred between you and the woman. This is the same thing Elohim told the woman in the very next verse, that her desire will be for her husband, and she is to submit to him in the direction of their marriage. Why? Because she made stumble for both of them. Looking at the Hebrew, the meaning of seed is seed sowing. It means offspring, the sowing of semen, descendants, and children. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Bring forth children in pain, and your desire is for your husband, and he rules over you. The sorrow will come later when Elohim increases her conception by giving birth to twins, and one will kill the other. Remember hatred between Satan's seed and Adam's seed. Are you getting a clear picture of what has happened in the garden? And because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it, cursed is the ground because of you. Now pay close attention. It is clear what Eve did in the garden for Elohim to increase her conception. And yes, it is exactly the way it's being told right now. Both Adam and Eve failed. This is our test to overcome this flesh body and not to give in to every desire of pleasure that we're offered. Okay, we're now to the part of the story where both Satan's seed and Adam's seed are born, Cain being Satan's and Abel being Adam's seed. If any of you are taking the time to check anything I'm saying out, you need to go and look at the genealogy of Adam, and you'll not find Cain listed as his child. That's because he wasn't the son of Adam, but his father, the devil. Now, after Cain was driven out from Adam, he goes and builds the first modern cities. And after much time, these cities spread out and all become pagan. Bereshith 6:1. And it came to be when men began to increase on the earth and daughters were born of them, that the sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men that they were good, and they took wives of them. Remember who the sons of Elohim were? The angels, as I have pointed out in Genesis 1:2, when all the sons of Elohim sang together. Bereshith 6:4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. They were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. These angels took wives of the flesh man and had children with them, creating a corrupt hybrid between the spiritual and the physical, which were giants and monsters. And these became gods to men, which is where we get all these religions of today, both those respected and those of the Greek mythological gods. And the corruption and the wickedness of the flesh on earth became too great for Elohim to stand. Everything he had made and created during the creation period has now been corrupted. But he finds one man worthy, Noah. And of course, plans set in place to clean the earth of these giants and monsters. And you know the story of Noah, but you probably missed much of it in the teachings of the church. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. Read that, afterward. The land which we have spied, and all the people whom we saw in it are of great size. And we saw there the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in their eyes. How did all the races from the six-day creation, and also these children of the fallen angels, survive the flood? The same way the unclean and clean animals made it. They were on the ark with Noah. Genesis 7:15. And they went into the ark 2 by 2 of all flesh, which is the breath of life, went in as Elohim had commanded. See, my friends, all flesh with the breath of life entered into the ark. That's all the races of the earth, including the children of Satan. That's how all these people were on the earth before and after the flood. So there you have the story of the beginning told to you in context. I could have spent many more hours giving much more detail and scripture to show you this last part was correct and in context, but there was not enough time on this DVD. I want to take the last few minutes of space on this disc to give a quick summary of this creation story while it's fresh on your minds. There was a first earth age before this one. Satan set his heart as that of Elohim, and we followed him. Yeshua was the plan to bring us back before this earth age was even made. Elohim divided Yeshua from Hasatan. Elohim made this second earth age to test us through flesh. After creating the flesh man, he made Adam the special man. Placed Adam, the special man and wife, along with Yeshua and Satan in the garden. Satan impregnated Eve. Eve gave birth to twins, Abel belonging to Adam and Cain belonging to Satan. We have corruption in the garden and also afterward with the fallen angels taking human wives. And there you have it. Entire story about the corruption of Elohim's creation, and the point of all this is they're coming back. The fallen angels, the corruption, the hybrids, and yes, Hasatan himself. And now you know the truth about Elohim and the creation and the corruption. I've given you enough in context scripture to complete the story of creation. It is in your hands now. When this test is over and you are kneeling in front of the true King, because you watched this video, you'll know during that moment you are without excuse. Shalom.